As you move through a city, you probably notice summer heat can be a lot worse depending on which neighborhood you're in. Take these two parts of Portland, Oregon, Lower Albina and Council Crest. They're about 3 miles apart. One neighborhood has lots of trees and a great view of downtown, while the other sits next to the interstate and gets up to 19 degrees hotter. This isn't exactly a coincidence. Many of the neighborhoods that get hit by the most extreme heat today can actually be traced back to racist city planning policies from nearly a century ago.
When we studied 108 cities across the country, we found a systematic pattern that the redline communities were today on average about 7 degrees hotter than their non-redline counterparts.
Redlining was the government-sanctioned effort from the 1930s to segregate communities of color by refusing to give them housing loans and insurance.
There were already lots of racial covenants that neighborhoods would basically say, we are not going to allow Negroes, I think was the language, Chinese, Japanese, Hindus in these neighborhoods. And redlining kind of codified this, where now it was allowable.
The federal government rated housing desirability on 4 tiers. The lowest was graded D and colored red.
They were not provided green spaces, they weren't provided street trees, they weren't provided a lot of investments that many other neighborhoods received. And so a policy that had played out 80 years ago was affecting what you and I would experience in our neighborhoods today.
Maybe you've heard of the urban heat island effect, where cities are significantly hotter than surrounding areas. Urban areas with roadways, asphalt, and large buildings turn solar radiation into heat. These features absorb the heat from the sun during the day. In the evening, when temperatures are supposed to cool down, the retained heat is released back into the neighborhood. Redline neighborhoods were more likely to be slotted for freeways, while green-coded neighborhoods were more likely to be given parks. Here's what that means for cities like Portland. You can see hotspots near highways and pavement, while trees west of the river keep things cool. Portland was actually the most extreme example of all the cities studied.
These areas have not had any interventions to change the neighborhoods since that period.
One of those formerly redline areas is Lower Albina, a historically black neighborhood. In the late 50s, the city of Portland flattened 30 acres from the neighborhood to make room for a stadium and parking lots. A few years later, the state bulldozed through the heart of the neighborhood to make way for the freeway, demolishing more than 300 homes. This led to a massive decline in what was once a thriving black community.
In Portland, because we don't have the Confederate history, we do have these monuments that engender the same kind of imposition of power that Southern Confederate monuments do, and the freeways, one of them certainly I-5, and the other is the Memorial Coliseum. That's our Robert E. Lee statue.
This is Rukaya Adams. She grew up in the Albina neighborhood and chairs a nonprofit called Albina Vision, a group that's working to repair the damages done to the black community of Portland's Albina neighborhood. Albina Vision has proposed a plan to redevelop the area, lighting the interstate, building affordable housing, and pushing for large-scale urban green spaces to cool the city. Meanwhile, the Oregon Department of Transportation has proposed expanding the I-5 freeway further.
We do not agree with the direction it's going, and we don't think that's the right way to heal the community and rebuild it. Because we were so intentional in destroying black communities, we must also be intentional in rebuilding them.
Lower Albina, like a lot of redline neighborhoods in Portland and elsewhere, has gentrified. Interstate construction decimated the population, but it's bounced back over the past few decades.
The discussion about Harriet Tubman Middle School and the safety of the air for kids is a major issue now. That even creates a point of tension, right? So as we talk about I-5 today, a lot of black folks are frustrated because they're basically saying environmentalists didn't care about the health of black children when it was all black, but now they care when their kids are there.
As climate change accelerates and we race to solve it, cities will continue to change exponentially. And with renewed calls for racial and environmental justice, solutions should include those who haven't had a say in the planning process.
It's a little easier more recently now that we're talking openly about systemic racism, because we're beginning to identify the ways that it plays out in the urban form. I'm hoping that over time it will start to reflect a more equitable view of how we should all live in the city. But I just hope that by the time we get to that conversation, that neighborhoods aren't so gentrified that there really are very few people of color, and the ones that remain there are the ones that are relatively privileged.